Welcome everybody to our July edition of Friday Office Hours. So glad to have y'all with us. It's a beautiful summer day outside, and we just wrapped up summer celebration, one of our consumer horticulture based field days that we host here at the West Tennessee Research and Education Center. That happened yesterday. So if we have any of y'all with us who came out to that event, thank you yesterday for making yesterday such a successful day. I hope you heard a lot of great speakers and learned lots of great information. I know that we all had a great time being with y'all and sharing information. So today we've got a great batch of questions that have come into the portal. Thank y'all for continuing to use that question submission portal. And we're going to chunk things up today into an ornamental session, turf session, and then we're going to do fruits and veggies, I think, together, because there were quite a few veggie questions, only a few fruits. So we're going to kind of lump those together. And let's start by introducing ourselves, if y'all want to, just for anybody maybe who hasn't been with us before. My name is Celeste Scott, and I'm the Extension Horticulture Specialist here in West Tennessee.
I'm Katie Whitbeck. I'm the Horticultural Extension Agent in Lawrence County, Tennessee.
Natalie and Anna, y'all want to go?
Yes, in the next room over for fun today. I am Natalie Baumgartner, the Consumer Horticulture Extension Specialist, often in Knoxville, but not always.
And I'm Anna Duncan. I am the curriculum specialist for plant sciences, usually in Middle Tennessee, but not always.
Yeah, they're just right next door. We decided we wanted to have multiple cameras so everybody could be on the video. So I was like, go in that other room. Taylor?
I'm Taylor Reeder. I am the horticulture agent in Williamson County, and I'm almost always here.
Lee?
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I guess I'm the lonely Eastern region agent today. Lee Rumble. I'm commercial horticulture, and my background's arboriculture. I'm an ISA certified arborist. Happy to be here.
all of our other East Tennessee panelists that usually join in, I guess they're all on summertime vacation, so we'll wish them well.
Okay, I'm Bob Attery. I'm horticulture program assistant in Robertson County.
But long time agent, you got to tell the rest of the story, right? Joe, you want to try? Let's try your sound again.
Okay, can you hear me better?
That's a little better, yeah.
A little bit better. Okay. Joseph Seago. I'm the commercial horticulture agent in Shelby County.
All right. Well, last month we started with ornamental horticulture. This month, let's start with fruit and veg. I think we're going to change it up a little bit. Does that sound good? Okay, so let's start at the top of our submission list here. Our first question is asking, how late is too late to plant summer veggies? Specifically, have I missed the window for pole beans and sweet potatoes? And this comes to us from Tifton County, so West Tennessean turning that question in for us. And I'm going to pull up, I think they had a picture attached to go along with this. We'll share that. Oh, it was just like a generic picture of some green beans, but they're still pretty, so I'll share them with you all. And just so you know, when you do submit a question through the portal, you don't have to put a picture. I mean, there is a place there for you to upload a link, but you don't have to if it's just like a general question. But definitely,
Well, that looks like some beautiful rattlesnake right there.
Aren't they pretty? So definitely just wondering what is our timeline looking like in Tennessee as far as warm season vegetable garden goes. Does anybody want to lead us off on that?
Well, we are just getting into where we can start doing our fall plantings. So for what's the ones that are beans?
Beans and sweet potatoes. Wondering if it was too late to do beans and sweet potatoes.
So sweet potatoes may be a little bit late. You'd probably be cutting that pretty close. But beans are doable. You may want to do more of a bean or like a bush or a snap bean, but you can still get some beans in. Usually by about July 15th is when we start recommending you do your fall planting.
That's a good, excellent point. And also I want to point out that if you're on top of things and you have some pretty good sized transplants, you could probably plant some late tomatoes and still be able to get some.
I certainly hope so. I put in tomato trials on Monday and Tuesday.
Oh, good. So yes, there's
Yeah.
still plenty of time. Plenty of time for tomatoes. What are there some other crops? Natalie, anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, I mean,
Anything
for
else that
warm
could still-
season stuff, it would be zucchini, cucumbers. I mean, because we're talking about crops that in 40 to 50 days, you can go from seed to harvest. Katie, I completely agree. Bush beans, so there are a lot of those
Peas.
shorter.
I think we could still do some peas, probably black-eyed purple peas. We could get some of those. But
I mean,
it's probably, what are some of the longer season ones that it's probably is too late to try to get
well,
started?
we could actually double dip on another question that is a couple down, where
Okay.
we had an East Tennessee person that was asking about butternut squash.
Mm,
And so, I would jump in and say, so butternut squash are, the smaller, more compact cultivars. You're in that 90 days. Our larger ones, you're in the 100 days. So that's one that is like, ooh, that's starting to get, July, August, September. You're like in the early part of October. And so, especially if we're talking about East Tennessee, like we're close, on those winter squash. But just like we were talking about zucchini and cucumbers, go for the shorter day cucurbits instead of the
Yeah.
longer day cucurbits. And if
I
you really
wonder-
want like a winter squash, or something to cook, like try an acorn or try some,
I'm wondering about like watermelon and cantaloupe. They're some of the ones that we always encourage people to plant later, right? Like there's some, warm season things that we can start earlier in the season, but we're like, those really need that warm soil. But now, do we have enough time? Like for most of those, like they're going to have longer maturity dates, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, you might be in the 75, 80 day for some of the stuff, definitely some of the smaller melons. And to me, this question is very much a geographical question
Good
at
point.
this point in time. That, middle, west, south, middle, and west, right? So, Katie's Lawrence County folks can probably get by with it. Those of us, in the more Northeast, we're getting to the point where you may have a fine plant, but right at the time when you need warm temperatures to push great melons,
Yeah.
it's October.
And then I'll also will throw in there that if you are sad because you didn't get your pumpkins planted, I think you can still have time to do some pumpkins. So we would usually shoot for like the 1st of July to get most of our pumpkins planted. Those were just for like personal use, right? If you're trying to like sell pumpkins, you would have planted them like far in advance because people want to buy pumpkins before it's actually Halloween. But if you're at home and just wanting to grow to decorate your porch area, your garden space, or use to do jack-o'-lanterns, especially in West Tennessee, you got some time to go ahead and get your pumpkins going too. So still lots of things.
What
that we
about
can do in the
okra?
garden. Say again?
Okra, maybe?
Okra?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
So
like
we
okra,
have-
that's a very polarizing plant, so.
Oh yeah. So while we're talking about like seasonality of things, and I think that we have proven our point that you still have plenty of time for lots of different warm season crops to get going. We had another question that was asking about what can I plant for fall harvest in my gardens. And this particular question asker was from Sevier County, and in their particular situation, they are growing in raised beds. But I mean, I feel like this seasonality question isn't specific to raised bed situations, right? And it seems kind of funny that we're already talking about fall season vegetable crops. But now really is the time that we need to be thinking what we want to be getting out into the garden for that fall harvest. So y'all want to kind of talk on that a little bit?
If you want to grow good Brussels sprouts in East Tennessee, you need to be ready right now, So, because when you think about, say, a broccoli or cabbage, a brassica, yeah, you could probably get a good transplant in 6 weeks. So for a September 1 transplant date, like we're there,
Yeah. Yeah, you need to be getting those transplants started if you're growing your own transplants, like right about now, like certainly. And then, oh, and we have a really good publication that has a nice
If only
chart.
we had a table for this.
I know,
We should make
but
a table
do,
for
don't
this.
we?
Think it
So
did.
let me,
Someone
I'm gonna
make a
pull it
table?
up and I'm gonna put that link in our chat for us. What are some other cool season things that people need to be getting on their radar?
Yeah,
Getting
your
ready
longer
for?
season brassicas, like the Brussels sprouts, if you're that brave. Some of the broccolis, your larger cabbages, like some of the smaller cabbages, you might be able to wait a little bit for. I mean, we're not that far away from starting transplants for collards or kale, an early August seed would give you a good middle of September plant.
I found our publication and I'm posting it there in the chat for anybody that wants to kind of reference that. It has a really good chart on the very last page. And here I'll just share my screen so you can kind of see how it's laid out.
I have a master gardener every year who tries to get Brussels sprouts, and she plants them earlier and earlier. I think she did like an August 1 planting last year, and she still didn't get them.
Oh, well, keep trying.
There. The only time I ever successfully grew Brussels sprouts was in COVID when I didn't have any summer or fall travel.
And you were just there to take care and monitor them every day.
Yeah, the August irrigation was the critical element. Yeah.
Cater to their every irrigation need. So here you can see we've got that first column that tells us what crops we're looking at. And then what I really love about this chart is that we've separated it into this spring planting column and then fall planting. But again, don't let that word fall mislead you because you can see a lot of these dates are July dates. And July doesn't seem like fall to me. But we're planting these things in July, August, so that we can get some fall harvest. And so that's kind of where that wording comes into play. Some other great info here about how much seed you need to plant different. Like if, for example, this one is 100-foot row, but you can make that fit whatever your garden space is. Helps you know spacing, how deep to plant them. So it's kind of your go-to planting chart, right? So this is a great resource, and hope everybody finds that helpful. If you lose this link, obviously you can always go to uthort.com. Click on the fruit and veggie tile, and this is one of the first publications that comes up under like plant selection. So excellent.
Well, and I was going to say too, you can also always, if you have ways of extending your season, if you've got frost blankets, things like that, then that also makes a difference because that gives you a slightly different resource and stuff. So like I grew up in Michigan and my mom and I have grown spinach into Christmas before. And the only reason it died is because we ended up going on vacation to Florida and didn't take care of it for about 2 weeks. So, there's a lot of ways where if you plan accordingly, you can really make things last, especially if it's like your lettuces and things like that or your spinach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, 100%. And that's on that chart. I completely agree with Katie. Those dates are essentially your open air kind of dates. So, you could wiggle a little bit on those when you're using extra measures.
All right. So we've got I hope everybody has a good grasp on what it's not too late to plant as far as warm season and things that you need to be thinking about and getting on your radar to get prepared for those fall and early winter harvests here in Tennessee. So we're going to kind of shift to another question. So this next one that came through the portal says, is it possible to successfully move a volunteer asparagus plant that has popped up in their blueberry garden space, which is kind of like a raised garden area, and then move that into their raised garden asparagus bed? And if so, how can it be done? And is there any particular time that they should be focusing on? Do we have any asparagus experts with us today?
Hey, Michigan is the asparagus capital of the country.
Well, it's a good thing we've got a friend here with us who is from Michigan.
So with asparagus, especially because we are in Tennessee and the asparagus does need to go through a dormant period, it's probably going to be best to transplant that in the spring so that way it's able to stay and go dormant properly before you disrupt that. So what I would probably recommend doing is go through and mark where the plants are now, put some stakes in the ground, something like that, where you can go back and find them later on. And then transplant them in the spring after we know that they've gone dormant. Because, you know, sometimes we have really weird flukes where it heats back up in November. And so we don't want that to cause issues with a fresh transplant. So if you transplant that in the spring, then that would probably be your best option. Just, you know, keep in mind that asparagus does have particular soil requirements. So it's going to want a pH of about 6.5 to 7. And it also needs to be in a well-drained soil. So don't transplant to a mucky spot, anything like that. And just kind of keep in mind their natural requirements. And then also just remember that, you know, asparagus usually takes about 2 to 3 years before it's harvestable. And so if you transplant that, some of it might come back all right, but you may have to go through a bit of that waiting period again while it readjusts to its new environment.
Yeah, might knock it back here. We were talking about this question before we started, and I said it sounds like asparagus is the equivalent to peonies, right? In our ornamental horticulture world. Once you get a peony going, that baby needs to stay there, right? If we try to dig it up, move it somewhere else, it's like, oh no, what's happening? So definitely, I'm learning every day and love it. I hope y'all are too. Okay, so next fruit and veggie questions. Well, we're still in the vegetable category. I love this question. It's about cover crops. Okay, so here we go. As a home gardener, if I use red clover as a nitrogen fixing cover crop in their vegetable garden area, does it make sense to leave it as much of that clover in place as a companion crop throughout the full gardening season? And then they didn't include this on the question, but I'm going to give the alternative would be to terminate that cover crop and then plant into the stubble that's left. So what are y'all's particular thoughts? Allow it to continue growing, plant into it, or terminate and plant into it?
This
cons,
one,
go.
Yeah, it's like this is a fun question because we actually talked about clover cover crops on our work group meeting like 2 days ago. So, I mean, from like the most common production practices for small scale or large scale growers are more of a terminate and plant into a killed cover crop. Because the first like geeky thing that I'll say is remember they are nitrogen fixing, but they're fixing it for themselves. They're not just distributing the nitrogen while living, right?
Good point.
So you have to kill them to get them to give up their nitrogen stores as a general statement. So that's kind of the way that it's done in a general production setting. But that's, you know, assuming that you have a way to cut it or crimp it or like there's some machinery involved there. And I guess my thought on a small scale, and I'll say this and then I'll let Katie talk, is the competition question. As a companion crop, can you manage the competition?
Right. You want to always make sure that we're going to call it the cash crop here, the plant that you're trying to grow to have a yield off of is going to be able to get all the resources that it needs to actually produce that crop. And if it's trying to grow in and amongst these competing roots of that companion crop, like is that causing, you know, some competitive issues as far as that goes? I like that. That's a good point.
Yeah. Then another thing too to keep in mind is like, you know, you can always have it between rows. That's another option, maybe rather than having it in the rows with your plants, because like Natalie said, competition is going to be a huge issue, especially with clover. And so you want to, if you're going to try this, which, you know, one of the things we kind of talked about the other day with a lot of our talks is there's no silver bullet in agriculture. A lot of it is just finding what works for you. So what we prefer may not be your preference. It's just trial and error, figuring that out a little bit. But if you have things like maybe you use a row cover over where your actual, like we said, the cash crops are, and then have the short dwarf type of clover that's not going to get huge and spread all over the place and possibly cause more issues, But if you have like a short clover that you can walk over or manage in some way easily, then that may be an option. So that way you can kind of always keep that there, and plus that's gonna, outcompete weeds and help keep that soil intact.
Yeah. I like that option for doing it in your middles, and
Yeah.
then you kind of are getting the best of both worlds. And I know some folks who kind of rotate their middles and growing rows like from year to year. And so the next year you could make your growing row where your middle was, where you had that benefit of that cover crop. So that way you're just always kind of building on that. I think those are lots of options. So no one specific right or wrong answer for this question, but just things to consider. So.
And
I think Taylor was
I was gonna say it's similar. It plays out in the ornamental world as well, and we see it all the time when someone puts a tree in the middle of turf and doesn't provide for the root system. As there's competition, the turf is gonna compete with the roots of that tree for nutrient, water, etc. So it plays out in all plant aspects. When you've got that well established whatever it is that has a good root system and you're planting in it, it's going to take away from what you are planting.
Yeah. Oh, I love that question. That was so fun. Thank you. That came to us from Murray County. So thank you. And then let's see, here's another still in this vegetable category. Best way to control squash borers, but then ... organically. Squash borers are so hard to control even with insecticides. I don't know that we're going to have a great option for organic control with squash borers. Does anybody want to kind of lead us into if we have any?
I mean, exclusion, screens.
Screens, using screens. Now, if you are growing with, like these, when we're talking about screens, I'm assuming you're meaning like kind of like these little canopy screens, right? That you just put
Yeah,
over
like
the
a
whole
row
plant.
cover, but with a screen instead of a spun button. Yeah.
So when we do that, then you're going to have to hand pollinate because you're also excluding your pollinators.
Well, or you're
So
protecting the plants to get them a little bit bigger, right? Or of course, I can always throw in you're growing a parthenocarpic, squash.
Oh, that would be a cool approach. Grow one that doesn't actually need that assistance from the pollinators if you're having such issues with the borers, and then you could use an exclusion technique like that. That's really the only thing that that's coming to mind. I know there are all kinds of things on social media and on blogs with all copper this and different, I don't know what we call those. I don't know, old wives.
Yes, the home remedies. But what do you think, Seth?
Yeah. But we're trying to remain science-based in our recommendations because that's what Extension does. And so we're glad that y'all are asking these questions so that you can be in the know. So as far as organic control, that would be one way to approach it.
Yeah,
so
and
good.
Natalie hit it right with the row covers. Those moths are coming out late spring and trying to find those stems of relatively younger cucurbit plants. They're trying to find a good spot for their young to bore into. So maybe considering if you do use row covers, kind of keep them on as long as possible. And then remember, pollinators are going to be mostly going to be foraging for nectar and pollen. Between that highest point of the sun in the sky. So for the most part, there are some native bees that might prefer different times there. But if you can kind of think about removing that row cover off and on. But I'll say protecting that stem at the base is always important. And one of my favorite things too is people always talk about using cheesecloth or even aluminum foil when you're putting those protecting that base of that plant because that moth is not going to try to lay its egg at the stem of a plant with a bunch of cheesecloth or foil at the base of it. So something like that might be helpful. But then also other organic methods. I know we talk about cultural controls all the time, and we can go on and on about garden sanitation. And I know you guys are rolling your eyes at me when I talk about that, but it is very important about overwintering and using crop rotation and whatnot. But let's say you tried all of that and it's still not working, and you're like, I gotta grow cucurbits every year. Some people have success with doing a trap crop and having an earlier season cucurbit grow, so you can destroy the infected squash and prevent another generation from occurring. But then you can control garden insects publication talks about all right. if you have an infested plant, consider, cutting that squash vine borer out and using your little pincher fingers, or maybe getting some forceps in there and just taking that larva out there and then re-hilling that cut part of the plant and allowing and encouraging new root growth. So, doing that organic method, I mean, you can't kill it with any organic insecticides anyway, because it's a boring inside the stem and not going to have contact. So, yeah, thank you for putting that link there. It's on one of those pages that strictly talks about squash vine borer. So thank you, Celeste.
One of my favorite squash vine borer memories was visiting in a community garden with a volunteer who hated squash vine borers so much that she could like hear the pitch of the moth when it was flying by, and she'd be like, "There's one nearby," and then she'd like run to the squash and try to like kill the clearwing moth. It was, I mean, she
That's
was good.
hilarious.
Like,
I love that.
yeah.
She is very familiar with that insect pest.
They're
Very.
pretty orange moths. I don't give her.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm impressed. That's awesome.